Hey wait, is that He-Man? Here's your look at the Mattel Masters of the Universe, New Eternia, He-Man. The most powerful man in the universe explores the world of Eternia, seeking to stop the sinister Skeletor from forging the scimitar of chaos. He can feel the twilight of the world coming. He can feel it in his bones. He must find the megalomaniac madman and put an end to his havoc once and for all. The fate of the universe demands it. A new Eternia, and a new He-Man to go along with it. Before we get a closer look, though, at the brand new Eternia He-Man, we're going to go ahead and grab the ruler just to see how tall the figure stands. And don't worry, we're going to do some comparisons also in a second. Now, this alternate head sculpt, the one that he comes with out of the packaging, has him, of course, with the horned helmet. Factoring that, of course, in, the figure stands 7.5 inches in height, or is about 19 centimeters tall. Then, for your obligatory figure comparisons, we can bring in another He-Man of this size. Here's what the new Eternia He-Man looks like next to the Master Universe Revelation He-Man, a victim of spray tan. Now, in this case, it does seem like they are using the same body. Both the torso, the arms, and the legs are all the same between the two figures. They did change, though, the boots, as well as the lower loincloth. We're going to talk more about that in a second. Another comparison we can also make, speaking of Master Universe Revelation, here's what He-Man looks like next to the Master Universe Revelation Skeletor. And if it seems like Skeletor is maybe a tad smaller than He-Man, don't worry, there is also a new Eternia Skeletor that we will be looking at in an upcoming review. First, though, let's have a look at the accessories to come included with He-Man. He does get himself a battle axe. I'm glad to see at least they included this. The figure is sort of based on the original concept art of He-Man before the figure line was produced, so you'll see a lot of rather familiar aspects of this particular He-Man, one of which is being his battle axe. The thing about it, though, is they didn't include a shield. Technically, I suppose you could use the shield that came included with the Master Universe Revelation He-Man if you did want to have that same look that he had in the original concept art, which again, the figure is loosely based around. The battle axe is nicely done. In fact, when you are comparing it against the shield for Revelation, you can see that the battle axe actually does have a rather nice metallic sheen to it. It's a much more shinier looking silver. This can fit into either one of his hands. I did already pop out one of the hands and swap it out with the alternate one that comes included with the figure. So he does have the means to hold the axe in either one of his hands. The figure also comes included with his power sword. And one thing that they did improve upon is looking at the power sword and then bringing in the original one from Master Universe Revelation. I thought the other sword was a little on the weaker side. I gotta say, like the newer sword that they went with, just comparing the two, well, it maybe lacks a little bit of the paint. Revelation could certainly be getting the point, I think, for more of the shinier metallic silver. I gotta say the shape is rather not only more familiar to the He-Man design of Power Sword, but it just looks a lot better. Much, much better. You can actually take the sword, and of course in both the cases as well, you can obviously put it into his hand. Either one of these hands will hold the sword perfectly fine. Or what you can also do as well, just off to the side and off more so to the back of the figure, on the back of his strapped torso piece, there's actually a little, not necessarily scabbard, but a little looplet there that you can slide the power sword down if you wanted to conceal and display with the figure without the sword being in his hand. I think in a case like this, kind of sticking more with the concept art of He-Man, I think I'd rather much instead display him with a battle axe, not necessarily a power sword. And again, if you really wanted to, you could technically use the shield, but you may want to use the shield on this side. Because he's got the guard on the side of his arm, it's going to make things quite difficult for him to properly hold the shield. It's just not going to be able to fit it, and you're really not going to be wanting to have it just off to the side like this. As you can see, that arm guard is going to get in the way of things. One other thing that's rather interesting about this particular figure, too, providing, of course, he can hopefully stand, this figure also comes included with a small little dagger. Not only was this something that was introduced originally in the Master Universe Origins line, is that original He-Man did have a side scabbard on the side of his leg that could actually house a tiny little dagger like this. But the original concept art of He-Man, again, somewhat loosely based, the figure is based from that concept art. The original figure design actually did have him with a little dagger on the side of his leg. You can take the dagger, and of course, yeah, you can't still fit it into his hand. But why would you want to, considering he already has himself the double-sided battle axe? And of course, he already has the power sword. If you wanted to display or holster it, he does actually have a little side section there on the side of his boot. It's pretty tight, though, getting this to slide in properly. I feel like I really have to fight to get that in there. I mean, once it's there, I'm probably never going to remove it anyways. It just is really difficult, and the quarters seem rather tight. Put the figure down here as well. The figure also comes included, providing he's not going to fall over on me. Let's move him down just a little bit there. Figure also comes included with a couple of swappable hands. Now, this hand doesn't seem to serve a purpose. Obviously, it's not there for holding a weapon. I suppose it could be there for holding a shield, but oh right, the figure doesn't come included with one. So it comes sort of just with more of a relaxed hand than anything else. I guess he doesn't always have to have punching fists. Speaking of punching fists, the figure also comes included with one of them. This was already on the socket of the forearm. I think it was also on this side here. Already popped it off just in preparation for the beginning of this review, so he would be able to properly hold both of his accessories. It does technically come with a punching fist, so if he did want to start punching Skeletor's face, he does have a punching fist for that. You don't want to be punching people's faces, sinister otherwise. The figure, lastly, also comes included with an alternate head sculpt. One thing I think they have at least improved upon is grabbing once again the Revelation He-Man. I thought the original head sculpt on Revelation He-Man was poor. Not very good head sculpt at all. Not saying that this is better. Well, I guess it is slightly better. They seem to have a real trouble lately sculpting a He-Man head sculpt. Everybody, of course, wants the defaulted retro look of He-Man. And anytime they try to decide to design a brand new He-Man head sculpt, it usually isn't well received. This one sort of gives you the vibe of a classic looking He-Man. I don't know if it's just the hair or the way the sculpting of the hair goes with the sculpting of the face, but I find there's something off about the head sculpt. If you like, though, this head, instead of the one that was on the Revelation body, you can actually swap the heads out. Just go ahead and wiggle this off the ball joint, pop it off like that. And just popping this back in place, probably going to switch this out for a second anyways, but the tan isn't quite lining up. That orangey tan that he had for his body isn't going to quite match the more brownish tan that he has on his face. But it does certainly serve as a stand-in. If you didn't really necessarily like this head sculpt, you want to go with this one instead, you technically could switch these around if you want a classic-looking He-Man body instead. Popping this off, because of course we're going to do some changes of that in a second. And then picking up, of course, up new Eternia He-Man, we're going to go ahead and get the battle axe out of his hand, which doesn't seem to want to free itself. Then we'll go right around to the back and spin the figure around, take off the power sword, because we're not going to need that either. Getting a closer look at the head sculpt here for He-Man. Now, I don't want to keep throwing out it's loosely based. It's sort of loosely based on the original concept art. The helmet wouldn't have looked like this, though. In fact, the helmet was actually closer looking like his shield, primarily having more of an orange color, and then just the band around the top here was sort of the thing that had the spikes. This is sort of giving you a more Viking head sculpt. I don't think it's all that bad, really. It's not removable because the whole point of it anyways is you're going to be popping off the head sculpt and just instead replacing it with this one, because the head sculpts aren't that much different from one another. It's just whether a preference of you preferring the helmet or if you prefer them without the helmet. Changing the heads, by the way, actually are quite easy. In fact, it's a lot easier to change the head on this one than changing the Revelation head. Go ahead and just pop the new head in place. And this is what it looks like. I mean, it does go pretty good. I mean, it still seems like his face is darker in a brown color when you compare it to the rest of his body, but at least the coloring of his body looks more natural. Nothing like spray tan He-Man we looked at earlier. This one notably also does have the additional shoulder pads. Again, the original concept art of He-Man actually would have only just had really the strapped front of his torso. These extra shoulder pads were thrown in here for the figure, and it's not something that can be removed either. These are permanently attached to it. They're molded in place. I feel like they're maybe on a little too bright of a coloring. They do technically, though, match the front of his belt for his loincloth, and they do match the coloring here on the side gauntlet bracelet. But I think a little bit of extra color would have also really gone nicely here. When looking also at this body, it very much reminds me of the Dolph Lundgren He-Man costume design from the Masters Universe movies from the 80s. Nice looking body. Don't know how crazy I am about the idea of him with the shoulder pads like this. And I still think like they're struggling at least coming up with a proper He-Man head sculpt. In either of the case, I'd actually just choose the one that has the helmet because I think it detracts a little bit more from the idea that something seems a little off about the sculpting of his hair. As for the rest of the body, we're going to again bring in, I guess it probably would be a little bit helpful as well. We'll just put the figure down here for 1 second. Why I'm putting him down also for a second is also so I can grab then the He-Man, because the other one didn't have the head back in place. Seems a little strange and out of place here to have decapitated He-Man. Comparing off the two bodies, it seems like the torso, the arms, the legs are all the same. Loincloth, though, is definitely different. Instead of actually having fur like the Revelation He-Man would have had, this actually more resembles almost like a leather material or a hide of an animal. The gauntlets are a little bit on the different side. This one actually is a much bigger looking gauntlet that he has on his forearm. I still don't like the idea of having He-Man with a gauntlet on his forearm, but it's there, and I guess technically as well, you could remove it. You just simply take the hand off, like that, and just slide this right off, if you don't really like He-Man with the gauntlet. Of course, now he doesn't have a matching bracelet on the other side, so after all of that, let's go ahead and slide. That was unnecessary. Slide that back in place. The boots are also something that does change between the two figures. In this case, He-Man from the new Eternia actually does have broader looking boots. I do actually like the coloring that they went with as well. So while they are using, yes, the same bodies, they have made at least necessary tweaks, so it doesn't look like we're looking at the exact same He-Man body. For the articulation on the figure, sticking still with this head sculpt is on a ball joint, so you can rotate it technically all the way around if you wanted to. Shoulders, yes, are going to be getting in the way of things. You can hinge the head up, you can hinge the head down, back, and also forth. You can bring the arms out, and even though the shoulder pads, yes, are there, they're not going to prevent the arms from hinging at a 90-degree angle bend. No problems whatsoever. Taking, though, the arms and rotating them all the way around, you could technically do it, but it does feel like you're putting a lot of stress against the shoulders. He does have a bicep swivel. Figure does have a double hinge on the elbow, though it's not as easy to get a double hinge just by the mere size of his bicep, and of course his forearm as well. Hands rotate all the way around. You can hinge those back and forth. The figure has also an upper torso ball joint. Figure has a lower torso swivel. Legs split out around the loincloth. Still, technically, it would be a loincloth, right? Even though it's just an animal hide. You can bring the legs forward, you can bring the legs back. There's a swivel 3/4 of the way up the thigh. Figure has a double hinge on the knee. There's articulation in the boot. I find actually these boots are a little on the looser side. Feet go back and forth this way. There is also an ankle pivot too, similar to the previous He-Man we looked at before. Still, though, I think because the head sculpt does have the horned helmet, and because, again, it's loosely based. How many times have I said it in the course of this review? Even though it's loosely based on the original concept art, I think for that reason alone, I think I'm probably going to want to display the new Eternia He-Man with the helmet instead of the alternate head portrait. And still, though, if you did decide you want to use this head, you could easily swap it out. Somewhat easily swap it out with this existing He-Man body from Master Universe Revelation, and you could have then two different He-Mans with a much better head sculpt. I still don't think they've landed a perfect He-Man head. They continue to work at it, and God bless the fact that they do. They continue to want to put out new He-Man heads, and then ultimately the fans are always upset. We always just want the retro-looking He-Man, which is ultimately what they did with the Master Universe Origins line. In this case, they did do something different here with He-Man. The colorings are a lot better, at least on this figure, skin-wise, and really, I guess, like the torso area armor as well. I do like the look of this more than I like the look of this. It's a better-looking He-Man, but I still don't think they've landed on a perfect He-Man head sculpt. Not just yet. Gotta give it again to Mattel for including some incredible-looking artwork on the back of the packaging for new Eternia He-Man. In a way, I feel like the figure doesn't quite deliver as cool as the artwork is on the back of the packaging. What's rather interesting, though, is you see He-Man is depicted holding both a battle axe and a shield. And yet, the figure didn't include a shield at all. I mean, I know he has to include that little side dagger, because again, that's a throwback to the original artwork of the figure. I almost, in this case, would have not included the power sword. Although I am happy that they included a better-looking power sword. I might even just display this with a Revelation He-Man. But I think in this case, I might have just packaged the figure with a battle axe and a battle shield and left the power sword out completely. Advertised at the bottom of the packaging, by the way, there's also He-Man, there's Teela, there is the new Eternia Skeletor, which we will be looking at in an upcoming review, and then just neighboring to that, the Revelation Merman. Looking forward to pick up that figure as well. For this He-Man, even though in final looks I've got him displayed here with the unhelmeted head sculpt, it's not one I'm going to settle with. I still think, while the Skeletor is fantastic, looking forward to showing you guys what he looks like in an upcoming review, I feel like the He-Man sort of just, he's okay. I still feel like Mattel can't quite land a perfect-looking He-Man head sculpt. They try. They do. But all the time that they try to put a new He-Man head sculpt, first of all, they get usually backlash from fans that are just saying, hey, look, that doesn't look anything like the classic He-Man. We're all old people. We're stuck in our ways. Honestly, though, this head sculpt of the two is my least favorite, and I'm ultimately going to revert back to having him with the helmet on. Even though it's the same face, it doesn't have the weird-looking hair. Maybe it's just the hair that's throwing me off on this particular head sculpt. And really, considering that they are using both ball joints after all, you can easily just use this head sculpt with the other body, that Revelation He-Man that we looked at earlier. Spray tan doesn't quite line up, but it's close enough. Shoulder pads are good on this figure, although a little bit of paint I think is really what could have enriched the sculpting of it. It just looks like it's not even gold plastic either, sort of like an off yellowish plastic. If they had gone with more the route of that more richer gold paint, as you can see on the back of the packaging, I think we'd have a much nicer looking He-Man, still as he is, based on the original concept art. I do like the look of this He-Man. I don't know, though, if they've nailed a perfect He-Man head yet. Eventually it's going to happen. One day, and I hope I'm still here when it eventually happens, we get ourselves a perfect, modernized looking He-Man head sculpt that everybody's going to be happy with. Not long-haired Origins He-Man, which I liked, the head sculpt. Not a lot of people did, and that's one of the reasons why they reverted back to using a retro-looking He-Man head. What do you guys think of new Eternia He-Man? Weigh in your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you guys, by the way, are interested to pick this one up for yourself, these have now just started to ship. Many online sites have started shipping this, and many stores have now started to carry this. I actually got this from Entertainment Earth. Just popped in, hot off the truck. It was one of the things that they have on their website, hot off their truck. And you can check out all the new things that have now popped onto their website. And the two things that did pop on their website was the new Eternia Skeletor and new Eternia He-Man. Put it in my shopping cart right away, my virtual shopping cart. Yeah, if you guys are interested in picking this one up for yourself, I'll provide the links down below to Entertainment Earth, where you guys can get this for yourself. If you guys are new to this channel, you're enjoying the content that you're seeing, make sure, if you haven't already done so, that you hit the subscribe button down below. Turn on the bell notification, and if you want to stick around, certainly hope that you do, while we have wrapped up the review of new Eternia He-Man, the review of what I feel to be a better looking new Eternia Skeletor will be right around the corner. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.